The Cardinals stayed competitive against arguably the best team in football, still fall 45-29 at home to the San Francisco 49ers. Welcome into Morning Scramble, presented by Verizon from the SeatGeek studios. Alongside Jody Jackson and Zach Gershman, I'm Dani Sureck. The Cardinals went toe-to-toe with the now divisional champs in the 49ers. Jody, how far off is Arizona from San Francisco's level from what we saw Sunday?
Well, that is a question that you had to certainly think about in the first half when this was a close game, a one-point game, and even at halftime, just a one-score game. And then after the game, when you heard Trey McBride talk about, we are close. We feel like, there were just a few plays that made the difference here. And there were a few. There were the turnover battle, of course, was lost 2-0. And then you had a couple of big plays by the 49ers that, you thought if there was a little more resistance there, this game could have been grinded out, which is what we saw in that first half. So how close, though, Dani and Zach? I mean, that is a loaded question because, this Niners team is loaded, to use that word again. I mean, they are loaded, and it's taken them time to acquire. When they acquired Christian McCaffrey, you kind of thought, all right, John Lynch is not messing around here. And then Brock Purdy, look, I am not going to discredit him. I covered him in high school, and so I don't mean that when I say this, but to find him as the last pick in the draft, I don't think anyone would fault me there for saying that was, I don't want to say fell in their lap, but a treasure that you didn't know was out there. So those kind of things, happened. And for the Monty Ossenfort in this group, they have some pieces here, no question. But there's a lot to be done, Zach. I think you'd agree. And they're going to start doing it again in this offseason. And the question then will be is how much can you do in one offseason?
Once the clock hits 0 against the Seattle Seahawks, the thought process is already going to be to the 2024 season. And I think the fact that we're even having this conversation truly does show that the Cardinals really are not that far off. When you look at the record and you see the type of score in this game, 45-29, you start to question, why are we even having this conversation? But the fact that you have 12 rookies on this team, the most in the NFL, that are producing really solid numbers week in and week out. You don't got a Christian McCaffrey type player. You don't have a Deebo Samuel as your number one wide receiver out there. But the fact that you have a tight end that could go, toe-to-toe with a George Kittle, who's in the upper echelon of tight ends in the league, all throughout the roster, there are ways to look at them. But if you think about it, Kyle Shanahan is a mastermind. He's a genius, as Antonio Hamilton said post-game when it comes to calling offensive plays. Jonathan Gannon's only in his first year as a head coach. Monty Ossenfort in his first year as a general manager. The hope is really there, Dani, with this Cardinals team.
And the hope you could really see come alive since quarterback Kyler Murray made his return. That's why the Cardinals aren't far behind in my mind, because you've gotten a good glimpse now since Kyler's return of what this offense can really look like with Kyler under center when he's able to connect with his receivers. The Cardinals are just missing a few pieces. To me, it's less about the Cardinals not having the right fundamentals and really just needing different personnel, needing some more depth, which I'm sure will be a big talking point this offseason. It was a season high in total yards, 436, and points scored, 29 by Arizona. The Cardinals moved the ball well. Both Arizona and San Francisco, 6 scoring drives. The difference maker, field goals. San Francisco continued to find the end zone. The Cardinals struggled. Jody, why was Arizona struggling to consistently find the end zone?
Well, on those 2 drives, Matt Prater had the 58-yarder and the 43-yarder. And really, it's simple, guys. One, you had a delay of game penalty, and one, you took a sack. And so I think it was 3rd and 22 on the one possession. It's really hard to succeed in those situations. And it also brings up some of the things we were talking about where you see glaring holes. I mean, you talked about the number 1 wide receiver for the 49ers. How about the Cardinals even having a wide receiver threat? Hollywood Brown, give him credit. He's been fighting through this heel injury. It's just not working out. After the game, Jonathan Gannon talked about, he's concerned about him, doesn't know if he's going to be able to keep doing this. He wasn't able to finish the game. And so that is one area that, frankly, you'd love to see maybe a Marvin Harrison Jr. in there. And that could immediately make a difference. But yeah, when you're talking about those 2 possessions where you needed touchdowns instead of field goals, and maybe you can, obviously field goals are part of the game as well. Matt Prater is a huge part of what this team can do as far as points on the board, but you'd like to see maybe 1 touchdown there, if not 2. But yeah, behind the sticks, again, that seems to be the biggest problem. And They were moving the ball. If I had told you guys that the Cardinals were going to outgain the 49ers
wild
before the game.
A top offense in the league.
It was great to see, and more points than they've scored all season long. I mean, there were some really good signs in this game. But yeah, when you get down there, and Kyler Murray mentioned it, when you're in the red zone, they had to be better in the red zone, and taking the sack back there, having the delay of game, and those things hurt, Zach.
That was something that plagued the Cardinals in the beginning half of the season. I remember so many times in this show we said, why could we get to the red zone and not be able to finish? And when you have a guy like Matt Prater as your field goal kicker, no matter what you hoped and you expect to at least be putting up 3 on the board. But those 4-point swings really do make a massive difference. And that's something that no matter what way you slice it, that's what changes the game. That's what changes the outcome. You talked a little bit about Hollywood Brown and the heel injury, and it's a very tricky injury. I know JG said he had it in like 8th grade, but it's no longer 8th grade JG, and this is going to be the NFL against the number 1 team in the NFL in the San Francisco 49ers. And I know JG said that he was concerned about the heel. And you have to question a little bit. Hollywood Brown is a warrior. He's somebody that wants to be out there. He said that he's one of those players that prides himself on the fact that he will battle through injury to play in a game. And when I asked him post-game, was it his decision to step out, the coaching staff? He said it just got to the point that the plan was to be on and off, but the pain got to the point where he simply wasn't able to do it anymore. You have to ask Hollywood Brown, and you have to ask the staff as a whole, does having a not 100% Hollywood Brown truly help the offense as a whole? Because that is a player out there on the outside that is not getting the targets, Dani.
It's been interesting to see the lack of wide receiver production the last couple of weeks. The last 2 games, the tight ends for the Cardinals have had 26 catches on 29 targets. Wide receivers, 6 catches, 21 targets. Hollywood Brown left the game with a heel injury. Rookie wide receiver Michael Wilson made his return after missing the last 3 games with a neck injury, finished the game without a single catch. Is it as simple as you don't have the personnel, or is it something deeper there, Jody, that's missing with this wide receivers core?
Well, I'm just looking at the stats once again, and we know about we're going to talk about Trey McBride, what he was able to do. But tight ends, McBride, Higgins, and Swaim, 15 of 16 catches versus targets, right? So, and we know Trey McBride's really reliable. I mean, we know they're bigger targets, as the tight end position simply is because of their blocking duties. But yeah, receivers, and I'm just going to look at 2 guys, Zach Pascal and Michael Wilson, 0 for 7, targeted 7 times, 4 for Pascal and 3 for Wilson, and no catches. So is it the lack of time they've had with Kyler Murray? Obviously, Wilson's been injured. The connection's just not there. It's really hard to diagnose it without looking closer at the tape and really taking that deep dive. But you certainly don't have that ability, to get open that you're seeing from Trey McBride. And the other thing about McBride is, and this is obvious, with his big build and his hands and the reliability you're seeing, he's not even open on some of these, and he's making the catch, and that's what's making him elite. That's what's making him special. Frankly, if I had the chance, I had a chance to pick him up in fantasy earlier this year, like midway through and guess what? I have Travis Kelce. He's been better than Travis Kelce, and maybe that's not saying, the Chiefs have just not had reliable targets, but it's another thing that you just get perspective and you say, wow, this last back half of the season, I would rather have Trey McBride on my team than Travis Kelce, just from the production standpoint. And that's just reality. And so what does that mean for him? It means the future's bright, and Kyler's connection with him is strong. So when you look at the wide receivers, you say, is it because there's a lot of different things, right? There's a lot of arms to this. Is it because Kyler is trusting Trey more? Is it because the receivers aren't getting open? Wilson and Pascal have not been go-to guys in this offense, but you would have loved to have seen, of those 7 targets, a catch or 2, and instead they came up empty.
This was only Michael Wilson's 2nd game with Kyler Murray, and that's something that has to be emphasized. And we mentioned Pascal and we mentioned Michael Wilson. Those are the only 2 wide receivers that you have on the active roster that are above 6 feet tall. So because of that, you don't have a big body that is as reliable as a Trey McBride, or at least has the confidence and the trust from Kyler Murray to throw those deep balls and to say, hey, if we're going to toss it up one way or another, and if we toss it up, we're at least hoping for a catch or a DPI, one way or the other. But the speedy targets is what you kind of expected throughout the season. You expected to have a Rondale Moore produce more than he has so far this season. Greg Dortch has taken advantage of the opportunities he has been given, but he hasn't been given many opportunities at that. He's been more on the special team side, and that's something that Jeff Rodgers has spoken about. You have to be mindful of their usage on offense when you're also using them on special teams. So that's something worth noting. And obviously the Hollywood Brown, Kyler Murray connection, something we already discussed, and that's something that you hope as these next 3 games go on, you could try to figure something out before the offseason begins.
Kyler said himself post-game, he's frustrated for the receivers. He knows the work they put in. It's not like Kyler isn't trying to find them on these plays. It's just not working out. If you are looking for a bright spot, if your wide receivers aren't producing, well, you've got a true number 1 tight end in Trey McBride. His first reception in Sunday's game, his 57th this season, set a franchise record for most receptions in a single season by a tight end. Zach, what has stood out the most about McBride's growth this year to you?
His excitement after he makes it. He's geeking out.
He doesn't have the swag, though, according to Kyler. It's still a little too awkward, but we'll get there.
We'll get there. I mean, he's only in his second year, and that is the craziest component of it all. Trey McBride is not even completed with his second year. He hasn't even played a full season in terms of Zach Ertz was the tight end 1 last season. Then Trey came in. He started to develop a little bit, and then the offseason began. And then the beginning of this season, Zach Ertz is there again. And then he goes on IR, ultimately gets released by the team, and Trey McBride develops into a tight end 1 and a top 5 tight end in the entire NFL. So to see his development, his progression, his confidence is a huge component of this. And for Trey McBride to go into it, he won the Mackey in college, and to be that second-round pick and then to come into this and produce the way that he has, if Trey McBride wasn't out there, you question what this offense would look like. Because he has been.
I don't want to think about it.
But you have to understand the fact that he is the most important piece on this offense right now. Drew Petzing draws up a lot of these 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 13 personnel. They really put a usage and an emphasis on the tight end position. So to see Trey McBride have the development that he has, and a large part of it is because of a guy like Jeff Swaim and with Zach Ertz's presence in the locker room, because they have developed him, and that hands-on teaching amongst your own players in the locker room, that's how you're going to improve the most, Jody.
Yeah, you can see that confidence, and even when he talks post-game now, his standard is so high. He knows he's the centerpiece, and he was even beating himself up over that first interception where, and that's going to happen. We've seen it over the years. We saw it with Larry Fitzgerald a ton. When you're trying to get the ball to that playmaker, you might have an interception here or there. You don't want to see it. That was a big play that obviously did, if you don't have that turnover, really the 2 turnovers, maybe this is a little bit of a different game. But Trey McBride knows that he's going to be contested all the time, and I asked him, what are you seeing now that everybody knows you're that focal point of the offense? He said, yeah, it's getting harder to get open, but you have to be unique. And so, that he's working on that with the coaches and, what he's learned, like you said, Zach, from a Zach Ertz and getting open and how to do that and how to evolve, because, again, it's going to get harder and harder. But to say that he did it against this Niners team, again, this is one of the best defenses in the league, statistically at the top in a couple of categories. That says a lot to me. 10 catches for 102 yards. I mean, that's not easy against this type of Niners club. And so, Dani, he was impressive to me that he was able to do that against this team. We've seen it time and time again where you go up against a team like this. Sometimes you're not having anybody out there that's getting more than 5 or 6 catches. So, I mean, it just, again, shows what he is going to be and what he is now and what he's going to be. He's a star.
McBride's second 100-plus receiving yard game this season. McBride refuses to go down on first contact. That's
incredible.
What's most impressive to me. He is tough to bring down. Kyler Murray threw 2 interceptions, the first on 4th and 3. A target to McBride ended in a pick 6. When Kyler Murray threw the first interception, was a target to Trey McBride a couple of weeks ago, it took Kyler a couple of plays to really get back and trusting McBride and throwing the ball his way again. That hasn't been the case. You don't want to see an interception. You definitely don't want to see a pick 6. The fact that after that, Kyler continued to target McBride shows the trust that he has with his tight end.
It's a mixed component of the trust. It's also a mixed component of the lack of production from the wide receivers. And something worth noting, too, is that the Cardinals, outside of Trey McBride, their wide receiver core, they're the last in the NFL in terms of yard separation between a cornerback and their wide receivers in terms of getting space. So we talk about that. They've been locking up the Cardinals wide receivers all throughout the NFL, and that's something that once the draft process and the free agency process begins, that's an emphasis you're going to be looking at. But I think in general, the fact that you have the confidence and the trust in that first game, and it's kind of unique that it took 34 years for a Cardinals tight end to get 100-plus yards in a game for almost Godfather and Jackie Smith, and then to go back, literally like 30-plus days later, and for Trey McBride to do it again was quite remarkable, and it's unique how he threw an interception to Trey, 100-yard game, threw an interception that was intended for Trey, another 100-yard game. So I'm not saying it's really the give and take that you hope for, but it's just a unique component at that. But you didn't get the win unlike you did against the Atlanta Falcons, and that's obviously the most important stat. But to have the trust from K1 to go to Trey McBride day in and day out, their confidence and their chemistry is only going to continue to develop, Jody, as these weeks go on.
Yeah, and I think, and it's a credit, big picture, it's a credit to Kyler Murray. As we're evaluating Kyler Murray, can he get the ball to his playmakers? I mean, we saw in the past sometimes he was unable to do that. And so I think it's a real combination of Kyler learning this offense, trusting his guy in Trey, and then Drew Petzing dialing up these plays.
Cardinals offense was balanced, 234 rushing yards. James Conner, after the game, was not pleased, Zach. Now, this was probably part of the game plan because the 49ers were without two starting defensive linemen due to injury. What exactly did Conner express to you when you got a chance to talk to him in the locker room?
Yeah, he was not happy. And I thought just the performance that he had going for the 86 yards, he broke off that 44-yard long run that he was cutting from one sideline to the other sideline. He definitely chewed up more grass than just the 44 yards at that. But he said it doesn't matter. He's not in it for the stats. None of those guys are in it for the stats. They're in it for the simple fact that they're going to be able to produce wins. And they weren't able to produce a win at that. He was very stern. He was very frank. And he said, we have to be a team that gets better as the year goes on. And while they have some guys in the locker room that understand that, everybody in the locker room is going to need to understand that. It's not a matter of singling anybody out. It's a matter of we're in this together. We're a team that's going to be going through this. And I think there were components. We spoke about in your intro, Dani, the fact that they were toe-to-toe with the San Francisco 49ers. They did not give up. And the running backs, especially in that position, they were a large part of the offensive game plan, especially when you don't have a Javon Hargrave or an Eric Armstead on that injury report. They were both inactive with injuries. The Cardinals took it to them. And those 234 yards on the ground definitely made a huge difference. And when you have a guy like James Conner and Amari DiMercato that emerged from a pile out of nowhere, don't even know how he got out of there, and then for Michael Carter to still come in and produce those long runs, another 19-yard run at that. And he also had the game against the Steelers where he had another 19-yard run on third down. So the running back room, they were struggling the beginning half of the season, the consistency. Well, they seemed to start getting their legs under them a little bit.
Yeah, that was one of the things I had written down kind of after charting the game and taking the detailed notes, and one of the big picture things was I like this group of running backs. James Conner had the 14 carries for 86. We saw him run hard as usual, including the 44-yard run. It was an amazing run that you talked about, just going to the right and then crossing the field. We saw his speed. We talk a lot about him with the angry runs and the stiff arms, but I mean, he can really turn on the jets. And then, you see what you get from DiMercato. You love that. And then Michael Carter. So I don't know what the future plans hold, but I like this trio.
One thing to also note, the 49ers had the number one rushing defense in the NFL, only giving up an average of 78 yards per game against the running backs. For Amari DiMercato's 49-yard run and for James Conner 44, that in and of itself beat the 49ers. And they've only given up 6 rushing touchdowns entering this game. They had 2 this one with Amari and James.
The Cardinals' season high in total yards on offense met with the season high points allowed by their defense against the most potent offense in the league. It's not just the 406 total yards San Francisco put up, it's the efficiency, averaging 5.5 yards per carry, almost 15 yards per reception. With the exception of 2 busted coverages, which ended in a Deebo Samuel and a Christian McCaffrey touchdown, the Cardinals' defense did enough. The missing component, pass rush. Quarterback Brock Purdy with a 78% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns. 3 straight games, Zach, without a sack. What has fallen off there?
And only 1 quarterback hit. at that. They weren't even able to get to Brock Purdy. So the fact that Brock Purdy had this sort of success with a 135 passer rating really is not a surprise, and just the efficiency that Brock had. But he had a lot of time in the pocket. And a big part of it, the Cardinals' lowest blitz rate entering this game was against the 49ers in Week 4. You had to dial up something to get to some pressure on Brock Purdy, and they simply were not able to do that. The blitzes were not there. A lot of the time you were going back in coverage, and I understand when you have explosive threats in a Brandon Ayuk, in a Deebo Samuel, in a Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle. The list truly does go on for that 49ers offense, and with the quarterback like Brock Purdy, it's very hard to stop. But the fact that you are only able to get one quarterback hit, that is a major concern because the blitz component of the game is not there.
What a hit it was, actually, right? Dennis Gardeck, and, I don't think he had intent there,
No.
but, yeah, definitely hearing from Brock after the game, like a stinger, why he laid there was the left arm. He couldn't he didn't have much feeling in there. He said he had never had a stinger before, so I think he was a little shocked, and then he was like, okay, I guess this is what this is. But yeah, that was the only, at the end of the game, you thought, okay, as much as that was dramatic because Brock Purdy had to leave the game for a moment, that was, as Zach pointed out, the only quarterback hit. And so you just can't have that. And like you said, Dani, no sacks over the last 3 games. So this is really an area of concern. It's hard for me to really fault anyone within the organization just because of the fact that you had a ton of injuries, mostly on the interior of the line, but still, those were guys that were going to be counted on to push the pocket, to disrupt, to create opportunities for some of those edge guys. And then, again, we've talked about it. You don't have a J.J. Watt anymore, and you don't have guys on the edge that are proven pass rushers in the NFL. Dennis Gardeck, again, not discrediting him at all, what he's been able to do. Really nice player for this Cardinals team. But you haven't gotten that from Zaven Collins. You haven't seen much from Cam Thomas. DeMcCagey at times, Ojulari, you like the pieces there, but you don't really have that guy that either is proven in the league as a star or a guy that's really making an impact. And so, yeah, Dani, I think that's I came away from this game thinking wide receiver, like we talked about, is a huge need, and then someone to help this pass rush.
It's a tall order for any defense in the league to limit running back Christian McCaffrey, a true dual threat. The 49ers leading rusher and receiver in Sunday's game, 115 yards on the ground, 72 in the air, 3 touchdowns. Zach, he's a beast. No other way around it. What could the Cardinals defense has done differently to stop CMC?
Not had him go to the 49ers, try to do something to prevent the trade. Just Christian McCaffrey is a beast at that, and it's not a matter of stopping him, it's a matter of limiting him. And in some cases, you were able to do that. I mean, rushing for him, he did have 115 yards. It didn't really seem like getting the 6.4 averaging per carry. Really wasn't easy, but with a threat like that, knowing that you have him in the running back spot, in the X, in the Z, you have him in so many different areas, and you can't put all your focus on him because then you have Deebo Samuel wide open. You can't put all focus on them two because then you have George Kittle up the middle. So it's all those different things, but truly it's a matter of getting pressure to Brock Purdy. That's the biggest thing because when you do that, it keeps him off balance. The Cardinals have had some of their best success when it comes to blitzing and getting to the quarterback against quarterbacks that are able to get out the pocket, are able to scramble. That's why you were able to have a multi-sack performance against a Lamar Jackson when they played the Baltimore Ravens and a Dak Prescott, somebody that's able to get out the pocket. In this one, though, Brock Purdy's a pocket passer, and he was able to sling the rock all around the field.
Yeah, and it is a function of the weapons. And Christian McCaffrey, the word beast, Dani, is what I was thinking watching him yesterday. There was one run where just the moves, his feet, his ability to cut the way that he does, and then he doesn't go down easily as well. We've talked about that with Trey McBride. Now Christian McCaffrey doesn't have that kind of size, but he's very hard to bring down. He's shifty. He's truly got it all as a running back, and then he also caught 5 passes, including a couple of touchdowns. So he is really a player that it's hard to really compare him to anyone in the NFL right now. He's truly the complete package. And when healthy, we're seeing now what he can do. The Cardinals are sick of seeing Christian McCaffrey, that's clear, and the kind of production that he's put up against them. And then when you see the plays that Kyle Shanahan can draw up using all these weapons, again, all of that functions as a well-oiled machine when you've got all their weapons healthy, and it just makes him more dangerous. And that was really the only – look, this Cardinal team, they fight They fought hard all game. There was a point early in the fourth quarter where you saw a little bit of McCaffrey. You're like, he's lopping off some big yardage here. And I just think they had to refocus. It is hard to take on a team like this. They're very good at run blocking. If anything, there might be a little bit of a weakness in the pass blocking, but the Cardinals were not able to take advantage of that. And so, you have to keep focus all game long. And they did that for the most part, but I imagine it's very mentally deflating to go up against a guy like McCaffrey.
McCaffrey finished with 7 touchdowns against the Cardinals in 2 games this season. McCaffrey was the only true killer individually in the game. The other killer, explosive plays. Tight end George Kittle, 35-yard catch. Wide receiver Brandon Ayuk, 22-yard catch. McCaffrey had a 19-yard run. That's what the 49ers do, Zach. That's where the Cardinals defense struggles.
And that's something that Jonathan Gannon says every single game. The explosive plays, whoever wins that battle, that's going to be the one that's going to be the one that takes the way. That's going to be the one that takes the game. It's going to be the turnover battle and the explosive play battle, and the Cardinals lost both.
They did. Third quarter, let's go back a little bit. It's still a 1-score game. Cardinals are down, and despite keeping themselves in the game through the first half, Jody, that's where things started to get away from them. What was your turning point in Sunday's loss?
Yeah, I looked at a few possible turning points. Again, the Cardinals had that touchdown on special teams that was taken back, but that was in the first half, and something about that third quarter, the way that it started, you just got the feeling the Niners were going to take it up another notch, and they did. So my turning point is that 41-yard touchdown pass to Christian McCaffrey. He got loose. We saw this on both plays, the touchdown to Samuel, the first one, not the last one, but the first one to Samuel and then McCaffrey. These guys are in motion and almost like a decoy, so casual. Great acting by these guys. I mean, they look so casual, and yet you know the names on the back of the jersey. So all Jonathan Gannon had to say after the game was, when you see a blown coverage like that, it's on coaching. He wasn't going to point anyone out. That's how he rolls. He is always going to put it on the coaches. But you would think safety, someone over there, Christian McCaffrey got loose, and he slipped, I guess, or fell down and even had time to get up and was untouched. So to me, that was just a backbreaker because that drive was 1 minute and 42 seconds. I just want to point out real quick, in the first half, the Cardinals had the ball for 18 minutes and the Niners 11:42. So that was going to be the game plan. You had to grind it out. And to me, that's the turning point, not only because of the play, another blown coverage, but just you couldn't let it be that easy.
The Cardinals won the time of possession battle by nearly 10 minutes, and for Christian McCaffrey to slip and then get back up and then get into the end zone, I think what the most deflating part of that was because the first touchdown was wide open to Deebo Samuel. So to have another blown coverage, that's why I'd say that is probably the biggest turning point, because of the fact that you already gave up one to a blown coverage, and normally it's all right, under the rug, let's get right back at it. And then to have it a second time, that's what hurts.
Goes back to the efficiency of the 49ers offense. Let's pull out the whiteboards for songbirds. I'm staying positive.
So am I.
Okay. That's what I like to hear.
I
don't hear that from Jody.
Went with I'm not trying to not be positive. I'm more talking about what the overarching theme of this game, I guess. And I tried to stay a little more current this time.
I did the complete opposite. This is scary.
I'm going to take the time to draw my highly anticipated picture. So, Jody, I will let you go first in the meantime.
We can't wait. I went with the San Francisco offense's 99 problems.
That's a great one.
I just came away from this game when we talk about the Songbirds criterion, and I'm not sure if I think it's how you felt after the game. And I liked a lot of the things the Cardinals did. It's just, this Niners team had so many weapons, and truly it felt like 99 problems, and you just could not. I'm not going to sing the rest of it, of course, but you just couldn't. You couldn't contend with that on that particular Sunday yesterday. I mean, it was just too much to handle.
You got 99 problems. Christian McCaffrey is one. Brock Purdy is one. George Kittle is one. There's definitely more than 99 with that one.
It felt like 99.
It definitely did. So I went back to the Bay Area, and this is kind of different from me. I went with Too Legit to Quit by MC Hammer, because I think that's something we've talked about all throughout this entire show, is the fact that the Cardinals were toe-to-toe with the #1 team in the NFL. Exactly why that they were too legit to quit. Their blocks, their offensive line, I thought did really solid. Nick Bosa only had one stat, and was the one sack that he did have. Paris Johnson Jr. did a really solid job lining against them. Yelled the throw hold on that James Conner rushing touchdown. had his initial block, and then went to the second level and had another block. So starting the game off with that first drive, and then to continue going on and to stay in it. And there were so many things that went against the Cardinals. Obviously, that special teams turnaround where you kind of hoped and you kind of felt that could have been a turning point, like momentum shifting towards the Cardinals' way. Unfortunately, the Cardinals have not had much success when it comes to challenging turnovers. But I think overall, the mantra of too legit to quit, that's kind of how I'd rock with this.
Are you going to break out the running man right now?
Too legit.
I mean, your mic's up, so don't do it. But
no, come on.
That song is going to be stuck in my head all day.
It's been stuck in mine. I'm surprised no one picked up that this is what it was going to be.
I went with Don't Stop Believin' by Journey. This might actually be my worst drawing, which says a lot. That is supposed to be a block of cheese because it's a cheesy song. I didn't really
know
have
what I thought it
anything
was?
else. Pizza?
Hold it up again. No, I love donuts, so it looks like a half dozen box of donuts with one one that was eaten.
I think unfortunately we're getting a zoom in on this, which is just.
But it's pizza.
There it is.
Swiss cheese.
Like now I get it.
Await me
now
for
I
a cheesy
get it.
song.
Now I want a donut.
I went with Don't Stop Believin' because as cheesy as it might sound, this organization truly is on the up and up. General Manager Monty Ossenfort, like he does after every game, waiting in the tunnel, giving handshakes to every player and coach that walks past him. This Cardinals team truly was not far off from the 49ers, at least in the first half. It came down to more of those mental errors or some of those little mistakes as this offense, as Kyler Murray gets more comfortable with all of these changes that are having to be made and playing with players he doesn't have a lot of experience with. I'm staying positive and going with Don't Stop Believin' by Journey.
I think the fact that Monty Ossenfort has truly embraced this new role as general manager, and he's not just somebody that sits upstairs and signs players and trades them away and messes around with contracts. He's somebody that truly tries to embrace himself with this team. He's out there at practice every single day. Sometimes he even slings the rock around to some of the cornerbacks back there, going back to his days as a college QB. So the fact that Monty Ossenfort has truly bought into this, these players have bought into Jonathan Gannon, this organization as a whole, this is a 3-11 team that we talk about all the time. It's very easy to point fingers. We see it all across the league right now. Some teams pointing fingers, talking about their own teammates, their own players, not blocking for one another during the game. This does not translate to what you have on the field. It does not translate into the locker room because this is a group that doesn't stop believing.
It is. It's a very positive group, a functional group, a group that cares about one another, guys with character, guys that fight, and that's a great sign. And every week we look forward. These games have been entertaining. The Browns game, we know what happened there, and you have a rookie quarterback rolling out there. You don't know what to expect. But that was really the only game where you saw that. But each week, including this week against Chicago, you guys get your coats on. Dani, it's going to be cold down there.
The Windy City.
But I look forward to seeing what they can do because there's always something that you can take as a positive, and there are always entertaining parts of this game when you have a team that will fight.
The Cardinals have their first of back-to-back road games this week in Chicago against the Bears. We do want to give our Morning Scramble listeners and viewers a heads up because Monday is Christmas. We are going to postpone our Morning Scramble show until Tuesday morning, so be sure to stay locked in on our social media channels, on AZ Cardinals, and our personal channels for timing and information on when that live show will happen on Tuesday, December 26th. We wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and thank you for joining us here today. For Jody Jackson and Zach Gershman, I'm Dani Sureck. We'll catch y'all next time here on Morning Scramble.